everyone, we're about to get started, so everyone in the back, why don't you grab some food and then just have a seat wherever you can find. There's a few more seats up front, and then there's seats on the side as well. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Adrienne Check. I manage the Big Ideas program along with Philip Denny in the back, Max Aronson, and Juno Fitzpatrick. We're a great bunch of advisors for you, and I know a lot of you in this room have already come in and seen us. And we'd love to have you stay engaged and continue to come in for advising and for many, many more events as our semester moves on. So first of all, I'd like to highlight some of our upcoming events that are happening over the next few weeks. So the most exciting event we have is next week, Tuesday, and that's Innovators at Cal. That's on October 18th from 6 p.m. in this space. And it's an opportunity for you to learn about the entrepreneurship landscape at UC Berkeley, as well as perhaps even pitch and get some feedback on your idea. So we're going to have one of our winners from last year. They're called Dosed Education. They actually have been through all three competitions based at UC Berkeley, so Launch GSVC, and they were our first place winner in our Mobiles for Reading category. So you can hear from them about how they went through all of these different processes and what they did to kind of tailor all of their proposal and materials for each competition. So it's really useful. And then after that, we're going to open up for pitches by student teams. And then you can RSVP online to do this. So if you have an idea and you're looking to recruit team members, or you just want feedback on your pitch, we'll have other innovators in the crowd that can give you some feedback on your idea, as well as some judges and mentors who will also be there to talk about your idea and to just get some exposure ahead of the deadline. So that's Innovators at Cal. Highly recommend that you go on our website and apply to pitch for that event. And then I also want to draw your attention. Most of you have been to the information sessions, but in case you haven't and want to get a thorough overview of the rules and requirements, we have our last online information session tomorrow at 3 p.m., and that'll be webcast on our website at bigideas.berkeley.edu/workshops. And then I know a lot of you are wondering how is this writing workshop different from the second writing workshop that we have on November 1st? This one is much more focused on previous proposals and best practices that came out of those proposals. The next workshop is much more tailored to you and your proposal. So it's an opportunity for you to get one-on-one feedback on your individual pre-proposal that you'll bring in to that session. I think I'm cutting out here. Okay. Thanks all. I want to give a special shout out to everyone tuning online. If you have any questions, please email them to bigideas@berkeley.edu, and Juno will be managing the email account and we'll be able to cover some of the questions that you have. And all of you, please ask questions. Let's make this interactive. Let's make this fun. I know you guys are in midterms, and the last thing you want to do is listen to me talk for another hour. So, and one more thing, if you ask a question, then you get a free t-shirt. So that's also an incentive for you to ask a question. So to give you an agenda of what's going to happen tonight, I'm going to cover rules and requirements really quickly just so everybody's on the same page, go through in depth the components that need to be present in your pre-proposal. And then after that, we're going to look at one of our old proposals that has done a really good job, the PicoPen proposal, which all of you should have. So in front of you, you should have two documents, the pre-proposal writing tips and the pre-proposal example, which is the PicoPen proposal.
If you don't have those, you can just raise your hand and Max will come around and bring you copies.
And to everyone tuning online, you can find all of these resources on our workshops page too. So bigideas.berkeley.edu/workshops. All right. So why don't we go ahead and get started? As a reminder, we're a year-long innovation contest that provides funding, support, and inspiration to undergraduate and graduate students with big ideas. To give you an idea of numbers, last year we had 266 applications, 57 finalists, and 41 winners. And this was across 9 different categories. So Big Ideas awards up to $300,000 in prizes, and you can get up to $18,000 for your individual for your project, and that's broken down to $10,000 for your proposal, and then another 8 if you participate in video contests, pitch days, etc. So a lot of end-of-the-year events that are really fun. We have 9 categories this year, but if you're all UC Berkeley students, then you can apply for all 9 categories. Is there anyone who's not a UC Berkeley student in here? Okay. So we have 16 eligible campuses, and our categories vary depending on what campus you come from. For instance, the only one who can apply to Improving Student Life is UC Berkeley, but Hardware for Good is open to all 16 universities. So make sure to just check on our website double check your eligibility on our website that's currently posted online. In addition to that, the team lead must be a matriculated student at an eligible campus. So what this means is if you're an exchange student, you don't technically qualify as a team lead. You actually need to go and find someone at one of the campuses that you're based at and be able to list them as a team lead. But it's really important that you find someone who's really responsible as your team lead, because all of our communication and ultimately the decision on funding will be decided through them. So make sure you're picking a really good partner in this process. The project must be student-initiated and student-led, which means that this can't be a research that you're doing for some faculty that you're working with or some project that has come out of the nonprofit or company that you've worked with over the summer. This needs to be student-initiated. And lastly, you can apply to one category per idea. So you can submit as many applications as you would like, but your one proposal, your one idea, must only be submitted to one category. If at the deadline you submit to more than one category, we will take from the first category that you submit to and just delete the second proposal. Does that make sense?
And does anybody have any questions? Because we do get a lot of questions about that last bullet point there. Does anybody else out here have questions? Okay.
Oh, I see one over there.
What if you have an idea where it applies to, let's say you have different iterations of your idea that apply to different categories. They're essentially different, but like are based off of one like overall similar concept.
Yeah. For that, I would recommend you come in and talk to us at advising, because that sounds like a really specific question. So I would want to sit down with you, go through those two ideas or those two different project ideas, see how closely they are related, and if there is a distinguishing factor that would set them apart enough that they can fall into different categories. So make an advising appointment, come in and see us and talk to us.
Thanks.
And also the best thing to do is to go to each category page and read thoroughly about what the category's goals are. And that'll give you an idea of what your best fit may be.
I heard that there are 16 universities for Hardware for Good. So is it more competitive than other section? Does it mean that I have to maybe like change route into submitting to different section?
That's a great question. So typically, the categories that have more eligibility and the categories that receive more applications have a little bit more funding in them. So it ends up turning out to be somewhat of a wash. And the other way I like to advise students is that don't think about the competition. Really, your greatest strength is your proposal and not the competition. It's not you against them. It's can you create the most innovative proposal with potential for impact. So focus on that. That's your best case scenario.
Great. And to quickly move on, so right now we're in the pre-proposal round. Your deadline is November 16th at noon Pacific time, and we have 5 weeks left in this process. So I've noted some events that you should actively participate in, especially if you're on the UC Berkeley campus, but for those who are participating remotely, we have writing and advising workshops. We definitely have advising office hours that occur through this time. And then we'll have a final editing blitz 2 days before the deadline, so you get a final read-through of your proposal and make sure it's in top form by the time you submit. So take advantage of all these opportunities. They're fantastic, and they will definitely help you in the process.
Can you sign up for your office hours online?
The question was, can you sign up for your office hours online? And you absolutely can. So under our resources tab on our website, we have a special advising page, and you can sign up for any slot between the four of us. And actually, we have additional advisors, Sophie Martin and Jennifer Walsky, who have other perspectives too. So be sure to take advantage of them.
And the one thing I would say in the piece of advice I would give you, top piece of advice, is between now and November 16th, the deadline, have as many people read your proposals. That means advisors with big ideas. That means going up to students in this room, faculty, anybody, your parents. Go talk to them, show them your proposal, let them get their eyes over your proposal and read it and give you feedback. That's the best thing you can do between now and November 16th.
Great. Any questions on the timeline? All right. So let's get to the meaty part of tonight's presentation. What will your proposal be judged on? As you can see, 40% of your proposal will be judged on whether or not it's innovative or creative. And I want to break this down a little bit because a lot of people think of innovation as this new groundbreaking idea, but it doesn't need to be a completely new idea or project or product. It can be utilizing that product in a way that has never before been utilized for a population that it isn't currently serving. So your idea is really a description of how you can build on the foundation that's already currently there and how that problem can be addressed in a better and more effective way. Is that clear? So that accounts for 40% of your score. And I just want to note that in the full proposal round, most of you already know this, but the scoring gets flipped on its head. So viability accounts for 40% of what you're scored on. So in this round, we want to focus on the creativity, the novelness of your idea, and then make sure that you have what it takes to pull it off in the next round. Is that clear? All right. So also we have potential for impact, which means that you'll be scored on 20% on the extent to which your problem is well researched and understood, and the extent to which your proposed project addresses the problem at hand. Also on viability, which accounts for 50% and 15% of your score in this round, it's the extent to which the proposed project appears viable, given the project description, the team's qualifications, and the team's understanding of the market or community needs. Additionally, you'll be judged on a category challenge. So how well does your proposal fit in that specific category, to get back to your question about categories, counting for 15% of your overall score. And then lastly, quality. So the extent to which the proposal is professional, persuasive, and the idea has merit.
And just to go back and give you some tips on things I've seen, some common errors with proposals. In that viability section, we talked about the market. Knowing the landscape in which your innovation will be working, either the community or the other innovations that are similar in the same space. Know what those are, have done your research, know how yours builds or exceeds upon what's already there. That's really, really important. Judges, time after time, again, have pointed out in proposals different innovations that are very, very similar that the students haven't raised in their proposal. So that's a negative mark immediately. And then the other thing is just making sure that you've done a thorough and complete and honest risk assessment, making sure that you've thought about the challenges you might encounter when you're putting your innovation into place, those cultural, legal, ethical considerations that you might want to consider before implementing. Make sure you've thought through those things and you've addressed them in your proposal and you have solutions for tackling them.
Any more questions? All right, I'm going to walk you quickly through the application platform because every year we get students who ask us how to apply to Big Ideas. So first you're going to go to bigideas.berkeley.edu. Our application portal just went live. So you're going to go to Compete, How to Apply, which will get you to this particular page. If you read the instructions, it says to go back and read the complete contest rules, so please go ahead and do that. But then also click on the category that you'll be applying to. So say I was a food systems applicant, I'm going to click on food systems, and that will bring me to this page. And you absolutely need to read through the entire category requirements. So there's two sets of rules in Big Ideas. There's the ones that appear right here under Compete. And then in each category, you have category-specific rules, which will dictate which category you apply to, but also how good of a fit is your proposal within this category.
And this is how, going back to the question on hardware for good and which category should you apply to based on competition, really this goes back to looking at the 2 categories or 3 categories that your project may fall under and figuring out how you can tie your project most closely to these category prompts. Then that's the category you apply to. Does that make sense?
All right, so when you click on the Apply Now button, it'll take you to an application portal, and you just need to make an account. And I want you to note to write down your email and your password because this will be the same account that you use in the final round if you move on as a finalist. After you make an account, you fill out this form, which is pretty straightforward, and depending on which category you apply to, the form will change slightly. Right here, I want to note that for student team member information, it may well be the case that you have folks who aren't students on your team, but all the information we want to know in this form is related to the students who are on your team. So any faculty advisors who you might want to list as a team member, just leave them off this portion, but be sure to note them in your pre-proposal PDF.
So on this application, are we putting down all our team members that we
So-
currently have?
In many cases, there are more team members than the 8 that is currently the limit in this application form. So
Okay.
if you have 10, make sure to put the most engaged 8. If you have less, just put less.
Okay, what if you get a team member onto the team after you submitted the application?
That's no problem. If you move into the final round, you'll have the opportunity to adjust this portion of the application.
Okay.
So removing team members or adding team members.
Okay, thank you.
What information do you need to put about your team members? Like as-
So a lot of it is the same information you would put yourself, what school you come from, what major, etc.
And if they are not UC Berkeley students and do not reside in this country?
But they're still students. The question was, if they're not UC Berkeley students or any one of the eligible campuses, should you put them in this form? And the answer is yes. We want to collect information on all students. Okay. Any more questions? This is all really straightforward, but I do want to bring to your attention 2 really important parts. And that's when you click on the next tab. So after you complete this form, there are 3 total pages in this application. So make sure you allot at least 20 minutes to fill this portion out. When you save this form and move on to the next section on project information, you're going to have the chance to upload your 3-page PDF. But in addition to that, I want to highlight 2 really, really important sections. So it's your 50-word summary, your elevator pitch, and your 150-word summary. And I want to let you know that all information in this application form is publicly available. So we'll use this information and put it into summaries, we'll give it to judges, we'll put it on our website. So if you want to keep anything confidential in your proposal, I recommend that you leave it out of this section. But we do want to share information about your project and garner exposure around it. So we ask you for a 50-word elevator pitch and a 150-word kind of extended summary.
And can you show them the checkbox
Which checkbox?
to keep it? Do you consent to public dissemination of your attached pre-proposal? So if you want something kept confidential, check that box. Don't put anything confidential in the web form information above. In your full proposal, your pre-proposal will be kept confidential.
And I want to emphasize that you put in a lot of time into your 150-word summary because this is the first thing that your judges will see. So you won't be judged on this section, but what the application form looks like when judges review your proposal is they'll see a summary with your 150-word summary, and then next to it they'll have the 3-page pre-proposal tab that they can download or read. So it's really important that you spend a lot of time on this section. And please write it in 3rd person. We distribute these and we put them all into one document, so it makes it a lot easier for us when they're all written in 3rd person.
Like a marketing type of elevator pitch, or like an informative, like, this is our product, this is what we're trying to do with it, or like, have you ever, like, what kind of format are we talking about?
So the 50-word pitch, the way I think about it, it should accurately describe what your project is and why it's needed. So kind of tackling a little bit of the problem and then a very thorough description of what your project is. In that 150-word summary, you have a little bit more space, right? So you can go into more detail about what that problem entails, maybe talk about your target population, absolutely be very, very clear about what your project is. I think the biggest shortfall in this section from teams that I've seen is that they talk about the problem for most of the time and include one last sentence that's really vague about their project, and the judge has no idea what they're talking about. So make sure it's thorough. And then also in the 150-word summary, you can also talk about how you're going to do it, right? And then the ultimate goal and how you're going to achieve that ultimate goal.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
The other thing maybe you're getting to this already, I'm sorry if I'm jumping on top of you, but so with this, you can save your application at any point. You can save a draft, you can come back to it later. Please don't wait until the last minute to start your application. Get in, learn the system, learn the forms you got to fill in earlier rather than later. We constantly have students coming to us at the deadline, frantic because they didn't have enough time. So not only allot the 20 minutes that you'll need, but try and get into this platform in advance tonight if you can, and start filling it out.
All right. And just an extra reminder to make your descriptions accurate, punchy, and attention-catching. And if you want us to read these over to make sure that they're making sense, we're happy to do so as well. All right, so let's get back to our Prezi and talk about what goes into your proposal. So just some general rules about your pre-proposal. This year, we're asking for a 3-page, 1,600-word limit without references. And what we've done in the past is we've had much more strict guidelines in terms of formatting and what font you use and what margins you have. But we want you to have, we want you to be creative in this process, have the liberty to kind of design things, make them easier for judges to understand and more aesthetically pleasing as well.
Are we allowed to have images and designs on it? Are we allowed to have images and designs as part of our 3-page pre-proposal, or should it be like only text, things like that?
Absolutely. You're definitely allowed to have images and designs and mock-ups of whatever you're talking about. I think that helps judges a lot. The general rule is, does this image convey more than what you can put down in words on paper? And if the answer is yes, then you should probably use some of that real estate for whatever images you have.
And there's and there's a good example that we're going to cover when we go over the Pika Pen pre-proposal, as you can see.
We just know that the 3-page limit is a little bit strict and it makes it difficult to put in images sometimes, so use that space wisely.
Hi. I had a question about the 1,600-word limit with the references not included. Does that refer to the quotes or like the actual
The citations.
citations? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Any other questions? All right. So in this round, you're not allowed to have appendices. And I just want to note also that there is no timeline or budget included in this round. In previous years for our pre-proposal, we've asked for timelines and budgets. I just want to make sure that's completely clear that that's not asked for in this round. We've moved it as a final round requirement instead. Okay. So to talk about your pre-proposal elements, I want to first remind you that Big Ideas is a social impact focused competition. So whether you're submitting an application for us, for other people, the thing that ties everything together is that we're social impact focused, which means that the judges reading your proposal are not just going to be from business or the private sector. They're going to come from the public sector. They're going to come from nonprofit. They're going to have a wide range of backgrounds, but ultimately they're also instructed to read your proposal and see whether or not you have a high potential for social impact. So please write your proposal with that in mind. These are the different components that we ask for in your pre-proposal. This by no means is an outline, and we do not mean this to be section headers for everything you need to cover, but we just have these components here because we think that these are the most necessary things to include in your proposal as you present your argument. And I'll go into more depth about each one of these as well.
In other words, you all know how to best convey your project. You know, you've been working on this. You know how you want to lay it out for the judges. You know how you want it to be read by them. So these are all areas that you have to mention somewhere in that proposal, but be creative and be sort of unique in how you convey that to the judges, convey it the best way you can for your particular proposal.
Feel free to push sections together, to deconstruct these sections, to add new ones. It's up to you to convey your ideas across to the judges. All right, so let's first talk about the problem statement. So what is the problem you're addressing? What is the need that exists? This is your opportunity to showcase the research and background that you've done on this topic. This is also a chance for you to demonstrate your passion and your connection to whatever issue you're addressing. A lot of this is anecdotes. A lot of this is maybe interviews that you've had with with people who have been directly affected by the problem at hand. But we do want you to back this up with research and statistics, especially in our international development landscape where things are increasingly becoming data and evidence driven. We want to make sure that you're doing your research and you have the relevant statistics down. So don't make your approach overly emotional. Be sure to back it up with some concrete numbers too.
And one of the problems I've seen with a lot of proposals is that they go into that second bullet point too deeply. For instance, everyone sort of understands that access to safe water is a very major global health concern, but I've seen people go on for a page in their pre-proposal talking about statistics to back that up. I think you need a sentence maybe to convey that. Judges are quick enough and smart enough to recognize that's a prevalent problem and then move on. Don't waste a ton of time going over the statistics, but make sure you cover everything. Does that make sense?
And to touch on that too, you don't have a lot of space, right? So don't be listing statistics that might be a little bit related to the problem you're addressing, but not completely related. So if you're developing a water filter and you want to talk about the impact that water filter could potentially have on your population, you could talk about poverty rates, but it's probably better to talk about things like access to improved drinking water sources or whether or not certain diseases that are water related are the cause of death for the population you're serving. Does that make sense?
And the more you can break it down into the local context, into the communities that you're facing, the better. You know, general statistics for a country, great, but for a community, even better.
And it's important in this section, or just generally in your proposal, to identify your target population. I have a lot of people coming to me that say you have a global approach for your project and that this could potentially serve the world, right? But because we ask you for that first year of implementation in the final round, we ask you to lay out kind of your timeline and your budget for 1 year, you're going to have to start piloting somewhere. So that population should resemble the one that you ultimately want to reach. So be sure to kind of be more specific about the population that you want to reach with your project. All right.
So from what perspective should we write it? Should it be like a first person, like we believe this, we believe that, or the company believes, or like how do you want?
It's completely up to you. It's only in the 150-word and 50-word summaries that we ask for third person. But if you feel like you can make a more compelling argument by putting it in first person, absolutely go for it. All right. Your second section that you must cover are the existing solutions that are currently addressing your problem at hand. So this is the section where you should really know your competitors and your potential collaborators in this space. I think another big problem that we've noticed in past years is that students will come in with an idea and not know what's really out there in terms of what's addressing the problem at hand. And this isn't just talking about things that are really similar to your project, right? It's also talking about other effective innovations that might look nothing like yours that have been also really effective in addressing this project. So make sure you do your background research, make sure you know who else is in this space, and then that'll set you up to talk about what challenges have they faced, what have they done well, why haven't they scaled to a global level where this problem is being completely addressed by them. And this sets you up to talk about your value proposition or why your particular innovation is needed for the population that you've identified.
And I guarantee you, if you don't do this well, the judges will call you out on it. It's the number one thing that judges call students out on.
Yeah. And the thing with the proposal is because this is a written-based argument, the best thing you can do at this stage is to do your research, right? So that could be qualitative interviews, it could be statistics that you pull, whatever else. Be sure to do your research. Okay. And I also want to note that the page allocations that I've given to each of these sections are very rough. Please feel free to do whatever you need with in terms of your page limit. This is just to give you an idea of what we think the weight of each section should be, but if for some reason you feel like this doesn't apply to your project, be sure to do it yourself. Okay, and this is kind of the heart of your proposal. It's the proposed innovation section. So in this section, you should be explaining your goals, so the things that are more abstract that you're trying to achieve, and then your objectives, so the specific, concrete, and measurable things to meet your goal. For instance, if my goal was to reduce poverty in the Bay Area, my objective would be that I'm going to create a one-year job training program for 100 people in Alameda County that provides certain types of resources, so maybe like career advising, resume writing, etc. And then the way I will measure my progress on this project is I'm going to track whether or not they retain jobs for an X amount of time after graduating from that program. So to unpack what I just said, I've identified who gets the intervention, how many people receive the intervention, what the intervention is, how long they receive it for, and how I define progress and how I'm going to measure that progress. Does that make sense? I just gave a lot to you guys right now, so feel free to take some time to write something down. And again, to not get overwhelmed by your project, we want you to focus on the first year of implementation, but then ultimately talk about what your end goal is, were you to kind of carry this through for many, many years. Okay, and here is your chance to talk about your value proposition too. So for those of you who don't know what that is, it's really just within the space that you're working with, what space does your project occupy? How are you adding value to what currently exists in that landscape? Every sentence in your proposal absolutely needs to add value because you have so little space. So instead of using big buzzwords like sustainable or holistic, you want to talk about what that means, right? So if you're talking about sustainability, does that mean lower environmental impact? Does that mean future community ownership? And if you're talking about a holistic approach, that means you're tackling the problem from multiple angles, and be specific about what angles those are, and how does that outcompete some of the approaches that currently exist in the landscape. All right. In this section, you should also consider very quickly some challenges to your implementation. So what barriers do you foresee that could come up? And then this is also a great place to talk about your partnerships too. Who have you already talked to and who will be helping you to implement your project? And that will count towards your viability scores.
Can we partner up with organizations overseas? For example, we are planning to work in India, so can we partner with organizations there?
I absolutely think that you should partner with organizations overseas if you're planning to implement in those areas.
Okay, thank you.
And where you don't have partnerships already established, it's great to mention the types of partnerships you might be wanting to pursue in the future. So if you know there's an organization that is the perfect partner in the country that you want to operate in, make sure you mention that partner and maybe talk about your strategy for making inroads.
And then one more note on the value proposition. It's always great to say something like, this water filter I've developed is portable, low cost, easy to maintain, all of which distinguish it from what's currently on the market. But it's even more effective to add some numbers to that, right? So if you wanted to say, according to recent statistics provided by the UN, the most commonly used filtration systems are porous clay filters, which cost X amount of money, weigh this amount of pounds, and are really difficult using local materials to repair. But my water filter costs X amount, weighs Y amount, and can be easily repaired by local materials. So make sure you're using all of the space in your proposal really strategically. All right, so lastly, your team bios. This is pretty straightforward. You just need to prove to your judges that you have what it takes to carry out your project. Every year we get students talking to us about, what if I don't have the team members that I currently need to carry out this project? You can always list them as a skill set that you intend to recruit for the final round. And then again, I would just pitch again for UC Berkeley students to come to Innovators at Cal next Tuesday. It's a great opportunity for you to talk about your idea and recruit some of the skill sets that you need. I know Max is doing some extra outreach for app developers and engineers who tend to be highly desired for some of the projects that come through our way.
And the other thing I would say to this point is come see us in advising hours, because we have strategies and we know student groups and areas of campus that you can go to find particular students. So come talk to us and we'll help you work through some situations and scenarios to find the students that you need for your projects.
Is this where, you mentioned in the beginning we should only list our student team members, but if we have had discussions with people who aren't students, is it all right to highlight them here briefly?
You should absolutely list them here. Yep. And we're going to talk about the PicoPen proposal next. And you'll note that their proposal was developed by an entire team of engineers. So they weren't interdisciplinary at all, which is okay. You can do that as a Big Ideas applicant. But my question to you is, if there was no one to kind of help out with marketing or branding or whatever else, can you really prove to the judges that this team has everything it takes in order to make this project viable and implementable and whatever else?
And the key thing here is relevant accomplishments too. We have students who submit the bios that they have on whatever web page, make sure it's relevant. If it's, if you're applying to IT for Society, the fact that you were in the campus jazz band doesn't really matter. So just make sure that you note the relevant accomplishments.
Okay. Oh, before we move on to PicoPen, just quickly, for all scaling up teams who plan on applying, you get an extra 1 page of real estate to talk about your past project. So list the name and the year of your original project, describe the original project idea, talk about your progress to date, and then make sure to detail the challenges you face, the lessons you've learned, and any accomplishments you've made since winning a Big Ideas prize. All right. So let's look at our PicoPen example. What I'm going to do is give you a little over 3 minutes to read it over, and I want you to identify some of the great things they did and some of the things that they can work on. And we're going to have a whiteboarding session. Anyone who participates, raises their hand, you get a free t-shirt. So I hope all of you participate. For everybody tuning online, you can find this example on our workshops page, which you're live streaming from. It's one of the button links that are there, so be sure to follow along and to send any input or questions you have to bigideas@berkeley.edu. One more thing quickly for for everybody watching. So you might be reading through this and might be thinking, well, my idea isn't nearly as developed as this PicoPen team. And I just want to say that this is rare, that they have a prototype and they've already developed kind of a model for what they're thinking of. You don't need to be intimidated. We have Big Ideas, ideas come in all kind of different stages. So they're a little bit farther along and they put together a really compelling pre-proposal, but we've seen tons of ideas who haven't gotten to this stage make it really successfully in our competition. All right, so who's got some strengths for me? No? We've got.
Here, I got it.
Well, it seems like they demonstrated clear evidence with statistics and interviews for professional therapists and such. And also they introduce some available products which are not perfect.
Landscape research, I like to call that.
Great. Yep, absolutely.
Or landscape research or market research. And you said the statistics as well that they cited were strong and relevant.
So let's just talk this through. So landscape research, I think, is one of the best things that they've done. Anyone else? Yeah. So that was evidence that the idea somewhat works? Yep, definitely too. Any other great things they did?
There you go. Over here.
Okay.
They convey their ideas in a very concise manner so that they're not taking up too much space, over defining the introduction or the like the problem statement or
Yep.
any other part.
They use their language really strategically, absolutely.
They use insightful but simple visuals to convey their message.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think their visuals are great, absolutely.
And that gets back to what Adrian was saying. They use that amount of space, right? And that conveys far more in that space than you ever could have conveyed using just words. So I think that was a really important decision they used. Anybody else? There we go.
At the end, they hint about expanding the future applications. Like it's not only limited to autistic people; it can be used everywhere.
Yep, talking about diverse applications of their innovation.
Yeah, and I think that's also very important too, because you have to sort of carve out your first year and what you intend to do in that first year. But if you can quickly show a broader vision for how this can be replicated or how it has other uses, potential uses, I think that's a really strong way to convey sustainability and sort of greater impact down the road.
All right, some other things that I've noted. They have a clear plan for development. They define specifically the community that they want to serve. They lay out their goals and objectives clearly. So there's a part on, I think, page 2 where they list out all of their goals and what they ultimately want to achieve. And so let's talk about their weaknesses now. Does anyone have input on weaknesses? This is the fun part. I should see a ton of hands go up.
Well, I didn't think this through that much, but I think that just kind of going on the fact that they're all engineers, I think their vision is a little bit focused on just like the pen. But I mean, they do have like a limited amount of space, but I just don't. I can feel the lack of like interdisciplinary, so it feels like, oh, like how will they market this, and just like what about the kids? How well do they understand the kids?
Yeah, that's a great point. So one thing we like to say about this proposal is that it's fantastic, it's clear, it's concise, it gets to the point, but it does read like it's written by engineers, right? So maybe it would have helped them to have somebody else who has some kind of background working with children who would be able to give a little bit more of a personal anecdotal touch to this proposal and talk about their connection to this particular issue.
And I think in this particular instance, the team was in the IT for Society competition. They were writing a very technical proposal. What they forgot is that even in the IT for Society category, you're going to have people who have just a background in entrepreneurship or a background in business plan development or business. So you're going to have different types of people in a category, even if it's IT, even if it's hardware for good. So you need to be able to speak to everyone.
They talked about some of the other solutions being cost prohibitive, but they don't talk about how much their solution will cost.
Yep, absolutely. That's a great point.
That was one I don't even think that we caught, but you caught. That's good.
I think it's not only the cost that they didn't talk about. While I'm reading through, I have a lot of like concerns about what kind of difficulty they will meet, but they didn't address those potential difficulties, the risk analysis maybe.
Yeah, like talking about barriers to implementation is something they could have covered a little bit more.
Yep, and that's the number 2 thing next to landscape or market research. Number 2 is addressing the challenges honestly and openly, and then having a plan for encountering those or overcoming those. I know students and people in general want to put everything out there in the most favorable light, but trust me, if you don't address those challenges, the judges will pick them out.
Any more? All right, so some things that I pulled up too. They listed some great statistics for Americans, but not about their target group, which are children with disabilities, right? Their bios are not super useful. Clearly, they have the technical expertise to put this, to make this project happen, but it would have been great to kind of have more specific expertise listed in their bios as well. Another point to reinforce that this is more technical writing, there's a line on the first page that says, Elim hand prosthesis developed by Touch Bionics, which indicates grip force via a tactical vibration motor. I have no idea what that means, right? And they covered this a little bit more by, in one section they talked about similar to the Nintendo Wii controller, which, and they use that as an opportunity to describe the inertial measurement unit. And I think that was really useful. So being able to talk to a broader audience is really important in your proposal. And then also, they don't really have a plan for marketing or manufacturing, and they don't have a financing plan, as we talked about as well. So just some challenges and things to think about as you develop your proposals. Do you guys have any questions about this?
Yes, they did. They were not the top team in the IT for Society category that year, but they did win an award. But again, just to caution or to let you know, not all proposals come in at this stage. Most proposals come in at the very early stage. We expect that students at this stage have just done some field work over the summer, maybe have begun to think about their project and get it out of their head and onto paper, but it's very early stage at this point. Most people haven't raised additional funding yet. Some have, but very, very few.
And I highly encourage you to look at our 2 other sample proposals that are listed online under our rules page. We have 2 more. One is a Light from Below example, and they also do a good job, but I think that their writing tends to be highly technical as well and not for a broader audience. And then you have Amplify Impact, which is a project that came out a few years ago. And because theirs is more kind of media and focuses on sharing the stories of Middle East entrepreneurs, that one has kind of a touch that a lot of you, I think, with your projects, depending on what your topics are, might draw some conclusions about that specific proposal. So yeah, go ahead and take a look at those. And then lastly, come see us for advising. We're all here for you. We're gonna, after this presentation wraps up in about 30 seconds, you can all just come and walk up and chat with us about all of your ideas. Please do come to our events and subscribe to our newsletter so you stay updated with all of our contest updates. And thank you everybody for coming.
And not only with the advising can we help walk through things like this and challenges you might be facing in your proposal, but we have a network of 1,300 judges and mentors that we've used over the past. So if you come to me and you need a specific issue addressed on your proposal, or you want to talk to a past winner who has a proposal similar to yours, whatever it might be, we can probably connect you with somebody who can give you that sort of expertise on your project that you need to make it really, really effective. So use advising hours for both gaining additional context and also getting advice on your actual written proposal.
And if you participated and want a t-shirt, just go see Juno and Max in the back.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.